This is Economics Revision lesson for grade 12 provided by the Ministry of Education of Ethiopia. Today we are going to see the last revision lesson of Unit 2, which is about the theory of demand, supply and elasticity. Under this lesson we are going to see the rest three types of elasticity of demand, called the cross price elasticity of demand, the income elasticity of demand, and the price elasticity of supply. Let's start with the cross price elasticity of demand. The cross price elasticity of demand is a measure of buyer's responsiveness or sensitivity to changes in price of related goods. The cross price elasticity of demand of good X and Y is calculated by dividing the percentage change in the quantity of good X divided by the percentage change in the price of good Y. The cross price elasticity of demand is used to distinguish whether the goods both are substitutes or complements. The cross price elasticity of demand value for substitutes is always positive. This is due to the direct relationship between the price of one of the commodity and the demand for the other. If the goods are the substitutes, the price of one product and the demand for the other are directly related. That means if the goods X and Y are substitutes, then a rise in the price of X will always increase the demand for commodity Y, and a fall in the price of X will always decline the demand for Y. So due to this direct relationship between the price of one of the commodity and the demand for the other, the cross price elasticity of demand value for substitutes is always positive. The cross price elasticity of demand value for complements is always negative. This is due to the inverse relationship between the price of one of the product and the demand for the other. If the goods X and Y are complements, a rise in the price of X will always decline the demand for Y, and a fall in the price of X will always increase the demand for Y. So due to this the inverse relationship between the price of one of the commodity and the demand for the other, then the cross price elasticity of demand value for complements is always negative. The cross price elasticity of demand value of unrelated goods is 0. That means a rise or fall in the price of one of the commodity will not increase or decrease the demand for the other. Now let's see the measurement of the cross price elasticity of demand. There are two formulas used to calculate the cross price elasticity of demand, called the point cross price elasticity of demand formula and the arc cross price elasticity of demand formula. The point cross price elasticity of demand formula measures elasticity of demand at a point on a linear demand curve, and mathematically it is calculated by dividing the change in the quantity of commodity X divided by the change in price of commodity Y multiplied by price of Y initial divided by quantity of X initial. The arc cross price elasticity of demand formula is used to measure cross price elasticity of demand between 2 points on a linear demand curve. Mathematically, the cross price elasticity of demand between X and Y is calculated by dividing Qx final minus Qx initial divided by the price of Y final minus price of Y initial multiplied by price of Y final plus price of Y initial divided by quantity of X final plus quantity of X initial. Now let's see using the following example. Suppose as price of a kilogram of good Y increase from 20 to 30, price of commodity Y was initially 20 and the price of commodity Y finally increased to 30. As a result, the quantity demand for commodity X, QX was initially 8 kilogram and finally quantity of X reached to 2 kilogram. Now, when we come across to the solution part, the cross price elasticity of demand between X and Y equals to the quantity of commodity X final minus quantity of X initial divided by price of commodity Y final minus price of commodity Y initial multiplied by price of Y final plus price of Y initial divided by quantity of X final plus quantity of X initial. So when we substitute this information, we get the value of QX final is 2 minus 8 divided by the price of commodity Y final is 30 minus 20 multiplied by 30 plus 20 divided by 2 plus 8. Now the cross price elasticity of demand between X and Y equals to 2 minus 8 is minus 6 divided by 30 minus 20 is 10 multiplied by 30 plus 20 is 50 divided by 2 plus 8 is 10. When we cancel 0 for 0 by 5 1 by 5 2 by 2 1 by 2 3, then the cross price elasticity of demand between X and Y is minus 3. This minus 3 indicates that the two goods X and Y are complements, because mathematically after calculating the cross price elasticity of demand, if you get negative value, then the two goods are complements. Now let's see the third type of elasticity called the income elasticity of demand. It is a measure of buyer's responsiveness or sensitivity to changes in income of consumer. Mathematically, the income elasticity of demand is calculated by dividing the percentage change in quantity demanded caused by the percentage change in income of consumer. Income elasticity of demand is used to distinguish whether the goods bought are normal or inferior. The income elasticity of demand value for normal goods is always positive. This is due to the direct relationship between income of consumer and the demand for normal goods. That means normal goods are those goods whose income effect is positive. As income of a consumer increases, then the demand for normal goods will always increase, and with the fall in income of consumer, then the demand for normal goods will decline. So due to this direct relationship between income of consumer and the demand for normal goods, then the income elasticity of demand value for normal goods is always positive. And we can categorize normal goods into two called luxury and necessity. If the income elasticity of demand value is above 1, we can consider that the good is luxury. And if it relies between 0 and 1, the good is necessity. The income elasticity of demand value for inferior goods is always negative. This is due to the inverse relationship between income of a consumer and the demand for inferior goods. Inferior goods are those goods whose income effect is negative. That means as income of a consumer increases, then the demand for inferior goods will decline, and with the fall in income of consumer, then the demand for inferior goods will increase. Due to this inverse relationship between income of a consumer and the demand for inferior goods, then the income elasticity of demand value for inferior goods is always negative. Now, let's see the mathematical presentation of the income elasticity of demand. The income elasticity of demand is calculated using two ways, called the point income elasticity of demand formula and the arc income elasticity of demand formula. The point income elasticity of demand formula measures income elasticity of demand at a point on a linear demand curve, and mathematically the income elasticity of demand is calculated by dividing the change in quantity demanded divided by the change in income multiplied by income initial divided by quantity initial. The arc income elasticity of demand formula is used to measure income elasticity of demand between 2 points on a linear demand curve. Mathematically, the income elasticity of demand is calculated by dividing the final quantity minus the initial quantity divided by income final minus income initial multiplied by income final plus income initial divided by quantity final plus quantity initial. Now let's see the way of calculating the income elasticity of demand using the following information. Suppose income of a consumer increased from 20 to 30. That means income was initially 20 and finally the income reached to 30. As a result, the quantity demand for a good increase from 2 kg to 8 kg. That means the quantity of a commodity was initially 2 kg and finally the quantity increased to 8 kg. Then when we come across to the solution, the income elasticity of demand is calculated by dividing the change in quantity demanded, which is Q final minus Q initial divided by income final minus income initial multiplied by income final plus income initial divided by quantity final plus quantity initial. And then when we substitute this information on this formula, the value of Q final is 8 minus Q initial is 2 divided by income final is 30 minus income initial is 20 multiplied by the income final is 30 plus income initial is 20 divided by quantity final is 8 plus quantity initial is 2, and then the income elasticity of demand will be 8 minus 2 is 6 divided by 30 minus 20 is 10 multiplied by 30 plus 20 is 50 divided by 8 plus 2 is 10, and when we cancel 0 for 0, by 5 1, by 5 2, by 2 1, by 2 3, and then we left with the income elasticity of demand, which is 3. So we can conclude that the good boat is normal, more specifically it is luxury. Now let's see the last type of elasticity called the price elasticity of supply, which is the measure of producers or sellers' responsiveness or sensitivity to changes in price of a product. Unlike the price elasticity of demand, the price elasticity of supply is always positive. This is due to the direct relationship between the price of a commodity and quantity supplied, because the law of supply states that other things remain unchanged, ceteris paribus. With the rise in the price of a commodity, then quantity supplied will also increase, and with the fall in the price of a commodity, then the quantity supplied for a commodity will decline. So due to this direct relationship between price of a commodity and quantity supplied, the price elasticity of supply is always positive. Mathematically, the price elasticity of supply is calculated by dividing the percentage change in quantity supplied for the percentage change in price of a commodity. There are two formulas used to calculate the price elasticity of supply, called the point price elasticity of supply, which is used to measure price elasticity of supply at a point on a linear supply curve, and it is calculated by dividing the change in Q for the change in P multiplied by price initial divided by quantity initial. Suppose the price of a kilogram of orange is given, which is bursary, and the quantity supplied is 18 plus for P. From this information, we can calculate the price elasticity of supply using the point formula. So first of all, if you do have the price, take the given price as initial price, and we can calculate the initial quantity by substituting on the given supply function, which is quantity supplied, which is equal to 18 plus 4P. Then the quantity will be 18 plus 4 times the given price is 3, and then this is 18 plus 4 times 3 is 12. This is 30. Now we have the initial quantity, and when we come across to the solution part, the price elasticity of supply at a point is calculated by dividing the change in Q for the change in P multiplied by the initial price divided by the initial quantity. We do have the initial price and the initial quantity, but we don't have any information about the change in Q for the change in P. But we can calculate the change in Q for the change in P using the slope of the supply function, because the slope of the supply function is calculated by dividing change in P for the change in Q, which is the vertical difference for the horizontal difference. Once if you get the slope of the supply function, the value of the changing Q for the changing P will be the reciprocal of the changing P for the changing Q. From a linear supply function, the slope of the supply function is the reciprocal of the coefficient of price. That means the slope is, the coefficient of price is 4 and the reciprocal of 4 is 1 over 4. That means we have the value of changing P for the changing Q, and then if the slope is 1 over 4, the reciprocal of the slope of the supply function will be the value of changing Q for the changing P, which is the reciprocal of 1 over 4 is 4, and we take the given price as initial price, which is 3 divided by we calculated the initial quantity, which is 30, and when we cancel 3 for 3, we left with 1 here, and by 4 by 2, 2 by 2, 5, and then we left with 2 over 5. This is the way of calculating the price elasticity of supply using the point formula. Now let's see the way of calculating the arc using the arc formula. It is calculated using this formula, which is quantity final minus quantity initial divided by price final minus price initial multiplied by price final plus price initial divided by quantity final plus quantity initial. Suppose as price of a kilogram of orange increased from 20 to 30, then quantity supplied increased from 2 kilogram to 8 kilogram. That means the price was initially 20 birr and finally the price increased to 30 birr. As a result, then quantity supplied increased from 2 kilogram to 8 kilogram. That means Q was initially 2 and finally increased to 8. Then the price elasticity of supply at a point is calculated by dividing the changing quantity supplied, which is quantity final minus quantity initial, divided by the changing P, which is P final minus P initial, multiplied by P final plus P initial, divided by quantity final plus quantity initial. And then the changing Q is 8 minus 2 divided by the changing P is 30 minus 20 multiplied by price final is 30 plus 20 divided by 8 plus 2. Now the price elasticity of supply will be 8 minus 2 is 6 divided by 30 minus 20 is 10 multiplied by 30 plus 20 is 50 divided by 8 plus 2 is 10, and when we cancel 0 for 0, by 5 1 by 5 2 by 2 1 by 2 3, then the price elasticity of supply is 3. This is the way of calculating the price elasticity of supply. Now let's see the ranges of elasticity of supply called the elastic, inelastic and unit elastic. First, the supplier is said to be elastic or more than unit elastic if the percentage change in quantity supplied is greater than the percentage change in price. That means if a little change in price of a commodity leads to a higher change in quantity supplied, then the supplier is said to be elastic, indicating that he is very sensitive, very responsive to changes in price of a commodity. Mathematically, the price elasticity of supply value is greater than 1. That means after calculating the price elasticity of supply, if you get elasticity of supply value which is greater than 1, then the supplier is said to be elastic, indicating that he is very sensitive or very responsive to changes in price of a commodity. For example, a 5% increase in price of weight leads to a 20% increase in quantity supplied. A 5% increase in price of a commodity is a little increment in price, but the resulting increment in quantity supplied is more than the increment in price of a commodity. That means it is a 20% increase in quantity supplied. A 5% increase in price leads to a 20% increase in quantity supplied, means in other words, if the price of a commodity declines by 5%, then the quantity supplied for that commodity will decline by 20%. So don't worry about the signs increase or decrease. simply watch the numbers that are attached in the price and quantity supplied side. If the number that is attached in the price side is small and the number that is attached in the quantity supplied side is larger, then the supplier is said to be elastic, indicating that he is very sensitive or very responsive to changes in price. From this example, the price elasticity of supply is calculated by dividing the percentage change in quantity for the percentage change in price, which is equal to the percentage change in quantity supplied is a 20% increase or decrease in quantity supplied is caused by a 5% increase or decrease in price, and mathematically we left with 4 when we cancel percent for percent by 5 1 by 5 4, and then the price elasticity of supply is 4. This means a 1% increase or decrease in price of a commodity leads to a 4% increase or decrease in quantity supplied. That means a 1% increase in price leads to a 4% increase in quantity supplied, or a 1% decline in price leads to a 4% decline in quantity supplied. Consider that price of weights increased from 2 to 3. As a result, quantity supplied of weights increased from 10 kg to 90. From this information, the initial price is 2 and the final price is 3. The initial quantity is 10 kg and the final quantity is 90 kg. And when we substitute this information on this formula, we get for this 4 indicate that the supplier is elastic. Graphically, as price increase from 2 to 3, quantity supplied also increases from 10 kg to 90. As price decreases from 3 to 2, then quantity supplied also declines from 90 to 10. Now let's see the inelastic range, also called less than unit elastic. The supplier is said to be inelastic if the percentage change in price is greater than the percentage change in quantity supplied. That means if even though there is a higher change in price of a commodity, if the resulting change in quantity supplied is too small, then the supplier is said to be inelastic, indicating that he is less sensitive or less responsive to changes in price of a commodity. Mathematically, after calculating the price elasticity of supply, if you get price elasticity of supply value that relies between 0 and 1, then the supplier is said to be inelastic. For example, a 50% increase in price of weight leads to only a 10% increase in quantity supply. That means a 50% increase in price of a commodity is a higher increment in price, but the resulting increment in quantity supplied is too small. This is a 10% increase in quantity supplied. Then the supplier is careless or less sensitive to changes in price of a commodity. This means a 50% increase in price leads to a 10% increase in quantity supplied. Means, in other words, if the price of a commodity declines by 50%, then the quantity supplied declines by only by 10%. Again, just ignore the signs increase and decrease. Simply watch the numbers that are attached in the price and the quantity supplied side. If the number that's attached in the price side is larger and the number that's attached in the quantity supplied side is smaller, then the supplier is said to be inelastic. Mathematically, the price elasticity of supply is calculated by dividing the percentage change in quantity supplied for the percentage change in price, which is equal to the percentage change in quantity supplied. From this example is a 10% increase or decrease in quantity supplied is caused by a 50% increase or decrease in price, which is 0.2. This tells us a 1% increase or decrease in price leads to a 0.2% increase or decrease in quantity supplied. That means a 1% increase in price increases quantity supplied by 0.2%, and a 1% decline in price leads to a 0.2% decline in quantity supplied. Consider that price of weights increases from 10 to 90. As a result, quantity supplied of weights increase from 2 kg to 3 kg. From this information, the initial price is per 10 and the final price is per 90. As a result, the initial quantity is 2 kg and the final quantity is 3 kg, and when we substitute this information on this formula, we get 0.25. This shows us mathematically, after calculating the price elasticity of supply, if you get elasticity of supply value that relies between 0 and 1, then the supplier is said to be inelastic. Graphically, as price increase from per 10 to 90, then the quantity supplied increases from 2 kg to 3, and as price decreases from 90 to 10, then the quantity supplied declined from 3 kg to 2. Now let's see the third range called unit elastic. The supplier is said to be unit elastic if the percentage change in price is equal to the percentage change in quantity supplied. That means if there is proportional change between price and quantity supplied, then the supplier is said to be unit elastic. And the price elasticity of supply value is 1. This indicates that the producer is neither very sensitive nor less sensitive to changes in price of a commodity. For example, a 30% increase in price of a commodity leads to a 30% increase in quantity supplied, and this means a 30% decline in price leads to a 30% decline in quantity supplied. That means there is proportional change between the change in price and the change in quantity supplied. This tells us a 1% increase or decrease in price of a commodity leads to a 1% increase or decrease in quantity supplied. A 1% increase in price leads to a 1% increase in quantity supplied, and a 1% decline in price leads to a 1% decline in quantity supplied. Mathematically, consider that the price of weight increased from 20 to 40. That means the price of weight is doubled. As a result, the quantity supplied of weights increased from 3 kg to 6 kg. From this information, the initial price is 20 and the final price is 40. The initial quantity is 3 kg and the final quantity is 6 kg. And then when we substitute this information on the arc price elasticity of supply formula, we left with 1. That means the supplier or the producer is unit elastic. Graphically, as price increase from 20 to 40, quantity supplied increases from 3 kg to 6 kg. And as price declines from 40 to 20, quantity supplied declines from 6 to 3 kg. Now let's see the exceptional types of supply curves called perfectly elastic supply curve and perfectly inelastic supply curve. The perfectly elastic supply curve indicates that any amount of a product is supplied at a fixed price. That means the supplier is extremely sensitive to changes in price, and the price elasticity of supply value is infinity, and the supply curve is a vertical straight line supply curve. When we see the perfectly inelastic supply curve, it indicates that a fixed amount of a product is supplied irrespective of changes in price of a commodity. This is a perfectly inelastic supply curve with price elasticity of supply value of 0. In this case, this 0 value, the price elasticity of supply value of 0, tells us the supplier will not respond at all to any change in price of a commodity. Now, let me give you a revision exercise. Consider that price of a good decreases from 60 to 40. As a result, the quantity supplied decreases from 3 kg to 2 kg, and then you are asked to calculate the price elasticity of supply and determine the range of elasticity and interpret the result. The second question is, consider that income of a consumer increased from 400 to 1,200 birr. As a result, the demand for good X increased from 2 kg to 4 kg. And the question is, first calculate the income elasticity of demand In second, is good X normal or inferior? Students, this is all about the last revision of Unit 2. Stay safe, stay home. Thank you.